Well, I think it's worth looking back, perhaps, at some of the predictions that I made last year. I know that we recorded a similar video in December last year, looking forward at 2022. And I know that back then I was talking about AI, predictive analytics, Gig CX, wearable technologies, the metaverse, and greater control over technologies. And I think it's just worth picking out maybe a couple of different points there, because I think certainly on the control point, we've seen a real intense interest in greater control over different social networks. For example, Twitter is a great example because of the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk. And him suddenly changing a lot of policies to do with things like content moderation. Suddenly everybody is interested in what do all of these technology networks or what role do they play in our life, and what does it mean when suddenly people can share anything on these networks. And we've seen a lot of people exploring different networks, whereas before they'd kind of settled on just a few. So that's very interesting. I think, there was a prediction there around the metaverse, and I think what we're still seeing is that virtual reality headset sales are still in the millions, but there's billions of online users. So certainly we need some sort of baby steps towards that becoming more of a reality. But certainly the prediction around Gig CX, I think we're definitely seeing that play out. Gig CX, there seems to be more players in the market. And what's really interesting to me is that most of the companies out there that are using technology for customer service type functionality are now exploring this. So you can go to all of the big players and they're talking about Gig CX becoming a reality. I think some of the other sort of key trends that I would say for this year, certainly AI has exploded into the general public's perception of what it is has become more of a reality. Whereas, if you talk to the general public about AI, quite often they'll talk about science fiction and movies and stuff like that, but they're starting to sort of accept and see it. And I think that's because you're seeing things like Lensa, the photo editing app, the ability to completely change photos, the ability to ask a system to draw you a picture, and for it then to be able to draw you a picture of a chair in the style of Picasso. So people are playing with this technology now and seeing the kind of power it's got. ChatGPT as well, showing that you can actually have a conversation with a chat engine now and actually have quite detailed conversations. I mean, I was actually asking the chat engine about James Joyce, the author, and we were having a conversation about an author of famous books. So you can see that the AI is getting so much more powerful now. Web3, I think, is another big trend that's exploded this year. And that's the idea that we're seeing more decentralization of data and technology that's being shared internationally, and I think ultimately this will move towards people having more control of their own data rather than us relying on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter to be running these networks. There will be more of a sort of decentralized network where people have responsibility for their own data. And I think that just finally, an important point that I think has become very visible this year is ESG as well, and a much greater focus on social policies of companies, corporate governance, and the environment. And I think that Neo Group published a report about ESG in the technology industry in around the middle of this year. And I think that what was very interesting from the Neo research was that ESG has kind of been accepted as important. All the companies are saying that we do this, we care about the environment and stuff. But culturally, it seems that most of the management haven't really bought into it. So, that there's some very interesting research there. So I think that, that's a sort of summary of, my predictions from before and some of the points that I think that have really become important this year. In his 2022 points, I think that some of them will transfer into 23 and be developed on. But I think that if I'm trying to think about like where will we see the most change or growth in the use of technology in the year ahead, I've listed 4 or 5 points where I think that there could be considerable change. I think the first will be around sustainability. I think that when companies are engaging with technology partners, the question around sustainability will be there by default. I think that previously it's been there as a nice to have. We want to see companies are doing the right thing. But I think now that you're actually seeing employees that want to work for a company that values the environment, that has good corporate policies, but customers are also asking those questions now, most often with retail, because, that's a very obvious thing. You can ask, how are you selling this t-shirt for $2 when it was made in Vietnam? So customers are asking these questions. Employees are asking the questions of the company they work for, and investors are asking the same questions. If you're going out into the market and looking for investment, then people won't invest in your company. And so I think that is going to be an important point this year, because every time that a company needs any kind of digital transformation, they're going into the market and finding partners that can help them, and they will want sustainable partners. So that's one trend. I think the economy is going to be another trend. What kind of technology are we using to manage the downturn? There's many major economies around the world that are looking like they may be entering into a recession. Across Europe, the United States may enter recession, or it may just about dodge it. We don't know yet, but certainly inflation is very high. Interest rates are high. Everybody is expecting a sort of period of 1 or 2 years of uncertainty. So I think that we'll see a lot of focus on things like cloud storage, applications on the cloud, using the cloud to manage costs and switching upfront costs into ongoing costs, so OPEX instead of CAPEX, using data analytics, being able to study consumer behavior and actually get closer to your customers by knowing what they want, almost before they want it. I was just talking to a big business process outsourcing company this morning, and they were saying to me, every retailer they go in and talk to has all of this data, like data lakes. They've got data. They can see everything that every customer is doing, whether they like a product or don't like a product. Where are they browsing? What are they looking at? What do they avoid? And rarely do any of these retailers really make good use of all this information that they have. And so I think that will be a laser focus because of the downturn. We have this data. We know what the people want. And things like improved self-service using technology, I think, will get more attention this year as well. So things like Alexa and Siri, integrating these kind of tools that people are using with information about products. I mean, typically, I suppose a good example is if I go out and buy a new smart TV and then I'm trying to set it up at home, the traditional route to getting help might be, I'm calling LG or Samsung or whatever brand it is and trying to ask for help. And I think the difference now is that customers are just going to Google or Alexa and they're asking for help. So I think that will be a change as well. I think, like Peter mentioned about working from home, the distributed workforce will be a big trend this year. But I think the big difference now is that we're over the COVID emergency. During COVID, everybody just had to do it and just had to make it work. Now we're seeing a kind of baking in of policies, how regulators are going to allow this to work, how we're going to acknowledge the compliance with that regulation. So it's becoming permanent, whether it's hybrid or 100% work from home. But that completely changes the approach to security. And I think that brings us back to AI again, because we're going to be relying on AI intelligent security to spot anomalies on the network, rather than the very traditional kind of idea that if you're inside the office and you've got a firewall, then anybody inside the office must have permission to be there, so they can pretty much do anything on the network. So we have to sort of throw away all those old kind of data protection standards and really push into a sort of much more intelligent and distributed model. I think IoT is going to start getting more interesting. I think one of the things holding back the Internet of Things has been 5G, the 5G rollout. I mean, I don't know about where you are, but certainly here in Brazil, when I'm in Sao Paulo, I can use 5G anywhere and have no problem. I visited the UK recently, and I don't think my phone switched to 5G once, even though I was in many different cities. And I think that's what's really holding this back, because if you want to build digital twins or do estate management, property management, all this kind of stuff, where having a lot of sensors all in one building, for that to work, you've really got to be able to use a 5G network. So I think that eventually we're going to start seeing this becoming more important, and things like digital twins will become much more visible. And then finally, I think we mentioned metaverse, and I think that what we're really going to see is a sort of baby step into the metaverse, but without using virtual reality. Certainly Meta, the company that was previously Facebook, they had an intention or an idea that everybody would move into the metaverse using the headsets. And I think that it was a bit naive of them to expect that people would go out and spend, $1,000 on a headset. When you're talking about gaming, people are having fun inside games. And so there's a sort of, there's a reason for you to go and enter into that world. If you enjoy Fortnite or Roblox or whatever, then you love spending time in that environment, and you might invest in a great PC headset or whatever. When you're just talking about it as a virtual world where you're going to meet your friends, or you're going to just go shopping or something, it's very hard to explain why you really need to do that when you could actually just go outside and meet your friends and go to a bar or go to the real shops. And so selling the metaverse as a virtual environment has been very difficult for these companies. So I think that we will get virtual worlds and be able to spend time in there, but we will need to be able to do it without the virtual reality or the investment in virtual reality, because not everybody's got this kind of kit at home yet, and not everybody wants to sit around spending all day in that kind of environment.